So tonight's talk is part of a series I've been doing. It's the 6th talk in an 8-part series on a core teaching in the Buddhist tradition of the Eightfold Path. And just to keep it fresh and look at it from another angle, I've been working backwards through the path. But let me back up just in case anyone's not familiar with it. The Eightfold Path is the Buddha's how-to manual for cultivating a peaceful mind, or for liberating the mind. And as the name implies, there are 8 factors in this path. And tonight's talk will be the 3rd factor, right speech. But the way the path goes, it starts with right view, which is knowing that what you do matters. The way you show up in the world, what you say, how you act, where you work, what you do with your mind, it has an impact. It has an impact on the people around you, and it has an impact on you. You create, to a certain extent, the conditions for your lived experience. You are planting seeds that will blossom in the future in your life. And we know this to be true, right? When we start putting goodwill out into the world, it feels better within us, and often people respond differently. From that right view, the intention arises to feel better. Let me start putting things out there that are going to feel good inside of me and reverberate well in the community around me. And then right then, the very next thing the Buddha points to, once that intention arises to act in a wholesome way, is speech. That is the first visible manifestation of the Buddhist teachings in the real world. Then it goes on to action, what we do with our bodies, then livelihood, how we work. Talked about that the last time I was down here. Then all of a sudden, the path shifts because we start to realize that speech, action, livelihood are all dependent on the mind state from which they arise. If we speak with a mind full of anger, what comes out of us is going to be harsh, cruel, hateful, cutting, caustic. So even if we had the intention when we woke up in the morning for right speech, if we're not watching the mind carefully, what comes out is different. And as we develop this awareness that everything originates from the mind, we get to the 6th factor in the path, which is right effort. And it's this idea that all day we've got to be paying some attention to our minds, because everything we do is going to flow from there. And then the last 2 pieces of the path are that carried forward. So right mindfulness, watching the mind and body, and right collectedness. That little bit of gathering around the breath or gathering around another object to steady the mind. So it's all right there. We see what we do matters. We develop an intention based around that understanding to be wholesome, to put out good vibes, for lack of a better word. We do it in how we speak, how we act, how we work. We realize it all comes from our mind. We turn inward. We cultivate mindfulness and collectedness all day. That's the path, in short. So coming back to right speech, it's worth noting that it comes before the meditation practices. It can be really easy to think of the Dharma as this sort of solitary inward practice, and sometimes that is the form it takes. But speech is about relationships. Very rarely do we just talk into the void, right? Other than maybe these new AI customer service representatives. We'll get into that another night. But usually we're talking to another human, right? Or a dog or another pet, but we are speaking to another living being. So the path in its first manifestation in the real world starts with relationships. The Buddha says if you want to do this, look at your relationships first. If you have the intention to be wholesome, think about how you're talking to people. Somebody asked me recently, actually, how would you know a wise or enlightened person if you saw one? And one of the answers to that question is listen to how they talk. So to actually share the Buddha's definition of right speech, how somebody would in fact sound if they had cultivated this path, is, and he phrases it often in the negative, not always, but I'll use the negative definition for now, avoiding speech that is false, divisive, harsh, or nonsensical. Flipped around into the positive, saying what is true, creates harmony, is gentle or pleasing to the ears, and is worth saying. That is right speech. Some people, I find, have this gift a little more naturally than others. I put myself in the latter category. It's taken me a lifetime to do most of these. It's a real practice to speak what needs to be said when it needs to be said in a gentle way that creates harmony and is true. It's a real practice. Joseph Goldstein has remarked on a number of occasions that if you focus just on speech, it would be a totally worthwhile path to liberation, right? Because it applies to everything you say and everyone you talk to. Your ex, the people in customer service, in my case, my kids when they're not brushing their teeth, a partner or family member who tells you to pick a parking space and then as you're pulling in tells you to pick a better one. These are all moments where right speech still counts. Online message boards, right? Your parents. It's not easy. And you can see actually how, despite Joseph Goldstein's suggestion that you could just cultivate the whole path through right speech, it would have to entail these other factors, right? You have to have an awareness of your mind. You have to have some collectedness. You need to build a life that has enough of a wholesome sort of support network around you, right? That you're not kind of writhing in pain and agony all the time, so that you have enough of this mental stability and awareness to speak in a way that is gentle and true and helpful and creates harmony, right? So it all is connected. One of the ways I like to think of the Eightfold Path, do you guys know those steamers that have the leaves on them and they open up, you put them in the pot? It's like that, right? So as you push one of the leaves of the steamer, and they all actually start to come together, right? So it's an interconnected path like that. It goes in a circle. Because once you get all the way around to mindfulness and collectedness and the mind starts to be clear, then you can see with more refinement how you want to speak, how you want to act, how you want to work. But sticking with silence for tonight, with speech, as you think about how hard it is to speak appropriately, it really reinforces the value of silence, how useful it is to not speak. Again, coming back to parenting, because that's just what's in my face these days all the time. I've only recently learned that I don't have to respond to everything my children say. And sometimes actually it's much better when I don't. Right? They're letting out an emotion, some strong feeling, and obviously snapping back at them is not helpful. I do that sometimes. But also trying to sort of follow the like parenting manual and get down and validate and talk it through. So sometimes they don't like that either. And it's exhausting. And they keep yelling at me. And actually, sometimes the best thing to do is just to look at them and say nothing. Or just keep doing what I'm doing and wait till they kind of lose steam a little bit and then talk to them. I don't have to speak all the time. Same with dealing with other family members. I used to think that every time somebody in my family said something that bothered me or wasn't true, I needed to respond. And it is only in the last few years that I've learned that that's just not true. Often, if I don't say anything, the whole thing just moves on. And sometimes people even apologize. But they rarely apologize if I say something back. Some people get worried. They hear about the kind of retreats we do in this tradition, silent retreats. And they're like, I think I'm going to go crazy not speaking for a week. How do you do that? That's so hard. When I tell people I go on retreat, that's often the first question they ask. Wow, how did you not talk for a week or 2 weeks or however long? And I say, that's the easiest part. It is so nice. It is such a relief to not have to say anything to anyone, to not worry about putting my foot in my mouth or impressing anyone or asking impertinent questions or not asking enough questions so that it seems like I'm not interested in somebody, right? All of the burdens of social communication. And most people I know, when they go on their first retreat, come back and they say it was very easy not to talk. Actually, it was quite nice, right? So silence can be a huge relief. And we have to talk sometimes, right? We cannot be in silence all the time, right? Words have the power to help us get through the day, right? Very sort of basic communication. They have the power to express our love, right? To connect to somebody on the deepest levels. Often that happens through language. Words allow us to make social change, to organize ourselves, to create a better society, to take care of the people around us, the world around us. And words have the power to liberate the mind, right? The Dharma, it's incredible, is carried through language for 2,600 years. It's packaged in words. Very old technology, highly effective. So language matters. What you say can be tremendously powerful. And the Buddha had a test, or a few tests, I should say. He would say, make sure, and actually I'll just read you his language. I won't summarize it. So in one sutta, somebody was asking him what right speech looks like, and he said, not knowing, someone who has right speech says, I don't know. Knowing, they say, I know. Not seeing, they say, I don't see. And seeing, they say, I see. They don't repeat in one place what they heard in another, so as to divide people against each other. Instead, they reconcile those who are divided and support those who are united, delighting in harmony, loving harmony, speaking words that promote harmony. They give up harsh speech. They speak in a way that's mellow, pleasing to the ear, lovely, going to the heart, polite, likable, and agreeable to people. They give up talking nonsense. Their words are timely, true, and meaningful, in line with the teaching and the training. They say things at the right time which are valuable, reasonable, succinct, and beneficial. That's a high threshold, but it gives you plenty to work on. But I will say you can feel it, right? You could try to sort of run all those things through your head, but you can also feel it. Most of us, if we start to pay attention to our minds and hearts, can feel when we've said something that connects with someone. And we can feel when we've lost them. And we can feel when we've annoyed them. And we can feel when we're starting up a conversation with a little bit of this, right? Carol Wilson, she's a wonderful teacher. She used to say, think about it for a second. You got something you want to say to your partner. It's a helpful correction, something they've been doing a little bit wrong, and you'd like to tell them to do it differently. She said, if there's even 1% of you that's really annoyed with them when you speak, they're going to know it. She has a Brooklyn accent, so I do a little bit of a Brooklyn accent when I imitate Carol. She said, you have to get all the way down to really actually just wanting it to be helpful. And you can feel that. You can feel that when you're finally relaxed, and when you approach somebody from a relaxed state, the way you start the whole conversation is different. It's like, hey, you might even say, I'm not sure how to bring this up because I don't want to create conflict, but there's something that's important to talk about. And the way that comes out, people feel, and you feel. It's a different vibe. So even if you forget all of the Buddha's guidelines, you know what it feels like to have a peaceful conversation. You know what it feels like to say something when it needs to be said. Now, actually two little distinctions. First of all, the Buddha would talk about idle chatter, but he didn't mean that politeness wasn't worthwhile. In almost all the suttas, they start off with people exchanging pleasantries and good greetings. There is a value, right, in the customs of a society to say hello to somebody, to wish them Happy New Year, to ask how they're doing. This is how we bond and establish a basic sense of connection and safety. So that's not wasted speech, right? What comes after that often is, right? But those introductory pleasantries, those are important. And another subtle distinction is that he said disagreeable speech is fine as long as it meets the other criteria. You're allowed to tell somebody something that they might not want to hear if it is said at the right time, gently, in a way that will ultimately be conducive to harmony, right? And is true. One example that comes up all the time, often in my therapy practice, also in my life, is somebody will do something that causes harm. Fill in the blank. They will embarrass, like in my family, one family member will embarrass another family member in public. Or in therapy, somebody's partner will do something that really hurt their feelings. And let's say, I don't want to tell them about it because they're going to feel bad. And that actually creates all kinds of problems. Because we're trying to save somebody from their bad feelings. And what we think we're doing is we're the ones causing the harm when we tell them that they did something harmful. But it's not true. If you do it in the right way, you're just letting them know that they caused harm, and their bad feelings come from the harm they caused, not from you saying it. Does this make sense? So it's okay sometimes to hold up a mirror and say, what you did hurt me. That wasn't okay. And it's okay for them to feel bad about that. That type of speech is actually often essential for good relationships and healthy societies. We have to be able to tell people things that are going to feel bad. I talked about this last week, but it's worth repeating. In the Buddhist tradition, the feelings of moral disgust and fear of social judgment are called hiri and otapa. We might just colloquially call them shame. And they're considered the moral guardians of the universe. So letting somebody feel a little bit of hiri otapa is really okay. Letting somebody feel bad because they did something harmful and feel a little disgusted with themselves or a little worried that they're being judged, that's fine. That's just an internal mechanism we have to help keep us from causing harm. As long as they don't sort of stay stuck in it, it's okay. It's a useful human emotion. So saying things that are slightly disagreeable and uncomfortable is fine. The metaphor the Buddha gives is that if a baby is choking, you don't gently try to massage the thing out of his throat. You get your finger in there and yank it out. Right? And it's going to be a little rough, but at the end of the day, if you save the baby, it's worth doing. So the last thing I want to do is just talk about how we do this, right? We're all going to walk out of here and you're going to be like, that sounded nice, but like, what do I do with that? So start with remembering that what you do matters. You're going to walk out of here and maybe you're going to go home because you live on your own. But then at some point this week, you're going to start interacting with people. And those interactions matter. Every single one of them is a chance to create a little bit of harmony or a little bit of divisiveness. Every single one. And the relationships you're in, they have a tremendous effect on your life. And if those relationships are building towards harmony, you will feel good in your life, right? If your relationships with the people around you are good, you will feel good. And even if the only thing you remember is those two things, that you have the power to make these changes and that they will affect your life, that will start to correct your speech. But if you want to take it a step further, start to make a habit of watching your mind and collecting around the breath a little bit. Because if you watch your mind, you're going to know when it's safe to speak and when it isn't. And if you collect around your breath a little bit, that little 10 or 20%, you can do it right now while I'm talking. You can take some of the attention you're paying to me or whatever else you're thinking about and give it to your breath. Not all of it, but just a little bit. That little bit of collectedness starts to steady and cool things down. It smooths out the rough edges of anger and rage. It smooths out the impulsivity. So watch the mind and stay connected to the breath. And right speech will follow. So here's my blessing for all of you in this new year. May your hearts be at peace. And may everyone you interact with feel the blessings of your presence. All right, I'll stop there. And I'll leave the recording on for Q&A because it can be nice to share that. Any questions on the talk? Misha, we'll get you the mic. I think you'll be able to hear. Let me know if you can't, friends.
You just made me think of a very tricky topic for me. There's a very close, biologically close family member that I have that I am basically not speaking with. And it's not out of a sense of animosity or spite, but it's just realizing that when I'm interacting with this person, stuff really acts up in me. And I don't feel like I can actually exercise right speech with this person. And so it seems like the choice I'm making is to just not communicate for their sake and for mine. But at the same time, I have the sense that it's a cop-out of sorts. And I'm just kind of curious if you have thoughts on that, the both sides of the communication cutoff.
Yeah, thank you. Did everybody on that end hear it? Great. And you guys online? So this is pretty common. Anybody else have a somewhat similar situation? I got one in my family. I think the starting point, right, to not speak if what you're going to say is going to be harmful is a very good starting point, right? So that part of you that restrains your speech is doing its job. And there's another part of you that cares about this person and feels, if I'm hearing you right, that this connection matters, right? Hence the like, it feels like a cop-out, right? There's something valuable here in that relationship. And the way I often like to think about it is if I can't talk about anything without sort of getting triggered, I can at least talk about why I'm not talking. So from time to time, a little note to say, I'm thinking about you and I wish I could talk. I haven't figured it out. Or I care about you and I still haven't figured out how we can communicate. Or even if you're ready to take another run at it, I don't know how to talk with you, but I'd like to figure out if there's some way that we can start to communicate in an easier way, right? And to the extent that that part of you feels like it's time to try again, the place that I've found that can be helpful is to talk about talking. Because if you talk to somebody and they just come at you all harsh speech and divisive stuff and non-truths and falsehoods, there's not much to do there. And there are so many examples in the Buddhist suttas where somebody does this and the Buddha just says, no, thank you. There's an example where somebody starts insulting him and cussing at him. And he says, if I'm going to get this sutta wrong, but he says, if you were a guest in my house and I served you food that was either disgusting or poisonous, one of the two, what would you do? And the person says, I would give it back to you. I wouldn't eat it. And the Buddha says, well, that's what I'm doing with your speech. That's yours, buddy. Right? And sometimes you just have to do it. Here you go. Like, no thanks. Again, like online comment sections, like just no thanks. So it's fine. And to the extent that your heart is longing for more, the starting place may be to talk about talking. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Yeah. Any other questions on speech? Yeah, Carlia. Hey.
Feel bad about it. So in the context of work.
Wait 1 sec. Can we get you the mic for the online folks? Sorry, Carlia. Thank you, Misha.
Thank you. Is it right speech if you feel bad about it? So in the context of work, there's a messy situation at work where, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot being said, but nothing is really being said. And so I'm having dialogues with my leadership and trying to understand like what it's trying to get to something that's clear, right? And so my preference would just be to work together, to collaborate, have a nice harmony and positive relationship. But that's not getting me to that clarity. And so I have to, in a sense, try to hold people accountable. Like it's still worded professionally and with compassion. It's just, I wish I didn't have to kind of go this route. Does that make sense?
It's tiring.
Yeah.
Anything else besides tiring?
No.
Well, that's work. If it's worthwhile, right? If it's exhaustion expended or energy expended, I should say, in the service of something that matters to you and that you love, right? Maybe you can keep the attention on that piece, right? On the ultimate goal. Yeah. Is that helpful, Carlia?
It is. Thanks.
Thank you. Louisa?
I guess I'm curious for your thoughts on venting and if there's ever a place for it and if it's ever helpful. I know it's something I do with my partner a lot, and it's something like I feel very safe doing it with him, but maybe it's not.
That's a great question. What do you think?
I think it's probably bad. I mean, listening to you talk, I'm definitely not in like a peaceful mindset when I'm doing it, but I think society at least has like kind of told me that maybe it's helpful, but I don't know. I feel like maybe sometimes I'm less worked up if he's able to like say something back to me that's calming, but sometimes I'm just, still mad after because I'm not really sitting with it in a peaceful way. I'm just kind of like,
Yeah, I think in my experience, I don't feel better after I vent. I just don't. I feel flat, burned out, a little gritty. Because what venting usually lacks, at least for me, is awareness. I'm speaking from the mind state rather than looking at the mind state. It's the difference between coming in the house and being like, this mother effer cut me off in traffic and I'm so mad, right? Versus, I am so angry. I feel so angry when I drive. People do these things and it like catches me off guard and I feel scared and that is very different because we're speaking about what's happening inside of us and there's a capacity to explore those feelings, to be curious about them, right? So the attention is actually on us rather than on the object of our hatred, right? Because if you just look at the object of your hatred, it just fuels your hatred. But if you look at the hatred itself, things start to change. Is that helpful? And sometimes if you've got a helpful partner, they'll provide the awareness that you can't provide in the moment. And that's when it feels good. When they're like, oh yeah, it can make me so angry also when I'm driving and somebody cuts me off because it's kind of scary. And you're like, it is kind of scary. And then they've suddenly helped you turn back on yourself. And that conversation is shifted to one of awareness. Is that useful?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Louisa, for running the mic. Arusha, and then, yeah.
So much. Hey Devin, thank you.
Hey, Arusha.
So I really like the idea of the good speech. Goes kind of with the whole Zoroastrianism, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. And as you were speaking it, I was like, easier said than done. Okay, let me phrase this. So I feel there's a certain amount of mindfulness / policing of yourself that needs to happen in order to have proper speech. So like when you're in a calm state and slow, when things are slow, it's very easy to be mindful. But a lot of times in life, things aren't slow. And at that times, I feel like it feels more like policing of myself. And I find that with people that I'm the closest with, like at the end of the day, when you're home with your parents, with like your partner, whatever, the people that actually matter the most, you have so much fatigue from the rest of the day that you're like, fuck it, let me let it rip, right? Like, you just kind of, sorry, excuse my French, but I'm fluent. But anywhere that came from. But yeah, like that's the hardest place to do, which is the most important. And sometimes you just want to be. So I guess my question is, how do you re-tap into that when you're tired and fatigued from doing it like, all day or, all week, or like if you've been in a family situation long enough? I hope that makes sense. What I'm asking.
Yeah. For me, that's where that like right view is so essential. Because when I wake up the next morning after yelling at my kids at bath time or yelling at my wife at bath time, I feel awful. It is that understanding that what I did mattered. I hurt my kids. I hurt my partner. My marriage is a little bit shakier. My relationship with my kids is a little bit shakier. And now I got to repair it. And it sits with me. It feels bad. Those here, the hirya no tapa come in strong, right? That inner disgust and that fear of judgment. They're gonna look at me a little differently at the breakfast table. And I don't want to live like that. And so really letting myself feel that and look at that gives me that strength, that courage, that willingness to try something different at bath time the next night, right? Which can be, in my case, right? Like I just need to walk out of here for a second. Like, don't drown. I'm going to just step into the bedroom for a second and like, I can't, right? Or like, honey, I need you in the bathroom, right? Like, I just, right? Or, a family member starts down a conversation. This happened recently and said something. And I was like, I really don't appreciate what you just said. And they said, can you explain it to me? And I said, no. Actually, no, it's fine. Like, maybe someday, but like I can just feel like the rage rising. And if I try to explain it to you, I'm gonna just rip you a new one. So like, no, I'll tell you later, if ever. And yeah, and it's because I've done that. I've hollered at them on the telephone and it felt awful for weeks. I was listening to Elliott Smith. It was really bad, and so it's not worth it. Yeah. Is that helpful, Rusha?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. That's a good one.
Hi, thank you for everything tonight. First of all, I feel weird wearing this divisive shirt when we're talking about non-divisive language. But my question is about, like, in Buddhism, there's a big emphasis, I know, on self-compassion, and I forget the word for it, like kindness to yourself. Is right speech in any way, is that ever something that the Buddha talks about, is addressing right speech towards yourself too, or is it more external, right speech?
I don't know how explicitly it's discussed, but there's room for it in the teachings, right? Because when we talk about mindfulness, one of the signs that we are not in a good headspace is when our internal monologue is just vicious, right? I don't know if anybody else here has that experience of just like a very cruel overlord inside of their mind. But yeah, I mean, if you hear that man or woman going off in there, right, it lets you know that you need something, right? And that's where the compassion comes in. What do I need right now? I am suffering, right? Something in me needs a hug, or is hurt, or is tired, or is hungry, right? And I need to take care of this being, because that sort of vicious, angry, aversive, cutting, caustic voice in my head is letting me know that something's not okay, that I'm in pain, right? So yeah, let that be a part of your mindfulness practice, and it can naturally lead to a self-compassion. And then, right, hopefully the voice in your head starts being a little nicer. Yeah. Is that helpful? Yeah. Nate?
Thanks. So I was previously aware of the high level of those 4 pieces of right speech, like the true, what was it? True, agreeable, worth being said, and what's the other one?
True, agreeable. Wait, true, creating harmony, pleasant, and worth being said.
That's right. That's right. Pleasant. And so I had not heard before that the part about that the pleasant one is sort of less important if the other ones are true, or you don't have to stay pleasant if the other 3 are true.
No, you can say something pleasant that makes someone feel bad. And that's okay if it needs to be said. Like, I can smile at my kid and say, it was not okay what you said. Like, it was not okay what you said to your sister. And they're going to feel bad because their father is telling them that something they did was not okay. And I said it in a nice way, but they still crumple. Right? But it needed to be said.
Okay. So whether speech is pleasant, that's not in the eye of the receiver.
No, it's in how you deliver it.
Huh. Okay.
Right? Yeah. People sometimes are going to feel bad if you tell them something about themselves or the world, right? And if that needed to be said and it's helpful and it ultimately creates harmony, it's still worth saying.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So whether something is agreeable, pleasant, that's more about like the tone and the intention
Yeah.
by which you communicate it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Or else we'd all be dancing around a lot of really important subjects.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Got time for a couple more? Yeah.
Yeah, kind of related to intention. I was thinking about like apologies, and I've definitely made some apologies before that were coming from a place of um like, oh, I don't want the other person to be mad at me, or like it's come almost like a more selfish like um intent, and I'm just wondering like if you have any thoughts about that, like if like apologizing is like the right thing to do and in many cases is like a good thing, but what happens when the intention is a little less like pure?
How did it make you feel?
How did what make you feel?
The apology that was not really meant as an apology, but more was just meant to try to repair the relationship.
A little icky.
A little icky. So there, that karma, that feedback is letting you know, right, that that wasn't quite the speech you wanted to deliver. What do you imagine would have felt better?
Waiting.
For what?
Like a more pure intention.
Yeah, so sitting through, and it would have required sitting through that very uncomfortable feeling of somebody maybe not liking you. That feeling, I don't know if anybody else knows that feeling. It's a hard one to sit through. Really hard. And that's where the mindfulness and the samadhi come in. You know, this is a big one for me. I've had to practice with this so much. I can often be a quick apologizer as well. And the key to getting out of that pattern was sitting there being like, you know, they're going to hate me. They're going to leave me. They're never going to talk to me again. I'm the worst person, right? And just breathing. There it is, like fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, just breathing, 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 fear of rejection. And, you know, actually, if you sit there and notice it and breathe it, it goes away in like 3 minutes. It's a long 3 minutes. Yeah. If you don't notice it, if you just ruminate, right? If there's no awareness or collectedness, it can go on for days. But if you actually just sit there and name it, it'll start to regulate. And then you may still apologize because you did something wrong. You may actually not apologize at all. You may tell them they hurt you or whatever you need to say that feels honest, but it's going to feel very different. Is that helpful?
Yes, super. Thank you.
Thank you.